so excited to be able to share this Japanese calligraphy tradition with you guys. And so without further ado, let's get started. So nice to meet you all. I know I can't see you, but I do see that there's a bunch of you from all over the world today. My name is Saori Okada. I am the founder of a Japanese wellness company located in London called Mogami. And Mogami's mission is to empower individuals to achieve a sustainable wellness journey. And this is inspired by Japanese culture and wellness principles. Prior to moving to London last year, I actually worked in the corporate space in the media and advertising analytics space in New York City, as well as Toronto. But I'm originally from Tokyo, Japan, which is where I am today. And so I'm so excited that you have decided to take an hour of your time to spend to learn about this culture and practice. And so I was really interested to learn where everyone is coming from today. You know, it was so interesting to see so much excitement. And so if you wanted to use the chat feature, I would love to learn where you guys are tuning in from today. Okay, so I see that we have a couple folks from Toronto. Yes, hi, Misha, Boston. Okay, I also see Dubai, Vancouver, Switzerland. Oh my goodness, we have such an international group today. The Scotland, UK. This is so exciting. Well, oh wow, there's a lot of people from Switzerland. This is really exciting. Well, hi everyone. Really excited to have you guys here today. And so what we'll be covering over the next hour is to first go over the 3 traditional arts. And then we'll be going over what shodo or Japanese calligraphy is, and then talking a little bit more about what Kaki-zome is. And then we'll be going over introductions of the calligraphers. So I will be performing a piece, but also we have a wonderful calligrapher. Her name is Master Shihan Chisai with us today, and she will be writing us another piece. From there, we'll be also revealing our 2 Kaki-zome pieces. And these were specific Kaki-zomes that we have created and decided on for this exhibition today. And it would be really interesting to really pay attention to these 2 explanations, because what we would love for everyone to do is choose one. And so it's going to be an interesting one to see which one everyone chooses. And then we'll be going on to the live Kaki-zome exhibitions. And then we'll wrap up with a few key takeaways and action items that you could potentially incorporate in your 2022. All right. So Japan, like I mentioned, has 3 traditional arts. And I'm curious if everyone knows these. I will say this slide does definitely have a few hints. But to provide a little bit of background about it, they are rooted in over 2,000 years of practice. And principles of each art show us how to connect with ourselves. And key concepts that we've been seeing in the wellness space, as well as the professional and personal development space, such as wabi-sabi, ichigo ichie. I don't know if you've heard of any of these. These are all coming from these traditional arts. And so what are the 3 arts? They are Japanese calligraphy, flower arrangement, and tea ceremony. And what's really interesting and why it's called the traditional arts is if we take a look at how we write it in Japanese, it actually teaches us a lot more of why they're said to be, connected with wellness. So here we have the 3 arts written in Japanese. So from the top, calligraphy, it's written here and it's pronounced shodo. Flower arrangement is kado. Tea ceremony is sado. And even if you can't speak Japanese, that's not a problem, because you could see the characters here and you may be able to recognize that the second one, they're the same across these 3 arts. In Japanese, this is a really important character. And this means do. And this also translates to path, way, and journey. And so when we put those into account and we read with the first character, it translates to the way of writing is shodo. And that is because the character before do is writing. The same principle follows for flower arrangement, or kado, which is the way of flowers, because the first character is the character for flowers. Tea ceremony, sado, same principle, where the first character means the way of tea. And so this is really fascinating that we have decided to use journey and path versus other characters. And like I mentioned, this is a really important character and concept in Japanese culture, because it is said that these arts are said to provide us with the opportunity to understand how we want to shape our life's journey. And so diving in a little bit deeper, now that we've taken a step back and established what the three traditional arts are, I wanted to share a few basic principles of what shodo, or Japanese calligraphy, entails. So a few principles. The first one is that it is a forever practice. In Japanese calligraphy, of course, there's certain ways and rankings within calligraphy and tests that you could do. But the main goal of practicing calligraphy is understanding that there's no such thing as the top or the best. And it's more so about being forever student of the art and always practicing and appreciating the fact that we change and our art changes along with that. The second principle is no double dipping. So you may be able to tell from the pictures here, but what Japanese calligraphy is at a very high level is you have a brush, you put ink on it, and on the paper, you write certain characters. When you do that, you have to actually decide how much ink you want to put when you write one character. After you've made that decision, you can't double dip. So say you're writing a character and you realize halfway, I don't think I have enough ink. I don't know if I could write this character. You're not allowed to go back and double dip. Why is this the case? You may be wondering. Well, this is because if we practice the art of respecting our past decision, this also allows us to adapt our art. And so what's really interesting is that if you accept that, you could actually be really flexible with your art. And you would be really surprised by the fact that if you change the pace, if you change the way you write, you could finish the character with such beauty that you wouldn't have been able to if you did double dip. The third principle is the flow and one stroke only. So it's really interesting because each character that you write has a specific order that is said to make it flow. And when you do write a character, you can't write the same stroke again. Really interesting, right? I always found this really tricky when I was starting calligraphy. I had such a urge to redo a stroke, but you could always see after, and my teacher would always tell me that, sorry, you're not actually appreciating what shodo is trying to teach us. And it's more about understanding that there's no such thing in life or in calligraphy that you can't go back in time. You've already made that decision. And so it's more about appreciating life's impermanence and moving nature. And the last principle, which is a really important concept within shodo, is this concept called mushin. And I'm curious if anyone has heard of this before. I was looking up what it's similar to in Western terms. And, it's similar to this idea of flow state in psychology where you're in complete presence. But if you translate the word, it essentially means mind of no mind. And it refers to the mental state where your mind is empty of all thoughts, all desires, and all assumptions. And if we look at how the character is written, mushin, the first one, mu, translates to nothingness. And then shin is the character that represents the heart and the soul. And so the idea here is that if we practice the art of calligraphy, you would be able to achieve a state of mushin. And it's easier said than done, because if you think about being in mushin, you're actually not in mushin. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. So what's important to keep in mind here is that if we practice this enough, if we are truly in the moment and present, then it will come along with the time. All right, so that wraps up what the basic principles are. So what is Kaki-zome, which is what we're here for today? So Kaki-zome translates to the first calligraphy writing of the year. And in Japanese calligraphy, it is one of the most important and significant events. You want to perform this from January 2nd to January 15th. So we just made the deadline, so we are within range for this time. And it is the yearly practice to set one's intention. And what's really important to note here is that we are typically writing an intention and not a goal. So what is the difference, you may be wondering? So an intention is an overall theme that is going to serve as a reminder for you for a certain amount of time, versus a goal is something more outcome-based. And so it's a specific outcome that you're trying to achieve. When we try to set New Year's resolutions, why is it that 80% of people fail at setting, with their New Year's resolutions? Oftentimes, I think it's because we don't dig a little bit deeper in terms of the overall intention, because, as life happens, we sometimes forget our goals. But if we could take a step back, remind ourselves of why we're doing that, which is what we're doing in Kaki-zome, it could help us, recalibrate and hopefully do a better job when we face our challenges in the year. And Kaki-zome ties in really deeply with the concept of kotodama, which is a Japanese concept. And it's essentially where it is believed that words have power to them. This is similar to the idea of manifestation or the law of attraction, but essentially it means that it's important to put things that we want into writing, because that is the first step of putting things into reality. All right, so that wraps up the overall principles of shodo and what Kaki-zome is. And I'm curious, has anyone tried these practices before, any of these traditional arts? And was it in Japan? How was it? I'm curious if anyone has experience with that. So feel free to write that down in the chat. Okay, I am seeing some people have tried Japanese tea. Yeah, that does seem to be the big one that I often hear people have tried before. All right. Cool. All right, so now I wanted to introduce our calligraphers. And then for our first calligrapher is myself. So I practiced calligraphy for about 15 years. And an important concept within Japanese calligraphy is gago. And gago is the Japanese calligraphy name that you are gifted. What's really interesting about this is that in Japanese calligraphy, you train under a specific teacher. So my teacher was Teacher Osawa in Sendai, Japan. And you are gifted your calligraphy name not when you hit a specific rank per se, but it's more about when your teacher has seen enough of your art and work and says that your art has character and it has a life of its own. And so this can take many, many years to be gifted if you're lucky to. I remember I was probably 9 years into my practice when my teacher was kind enough to gift me this name. And so my goggle is Seisan. And Seisan, the first character is for stars, and sen is, the meaning is to rinse, to cleanse, and to purify. And so my teacher wanted me to make sure I kept in mind that he hoped that my calligraphy would illuminate the dark sky with the brightness of shining stars. And on the right-hand side here, I do have some of my pieces that I wrote. Saku is my intention Kaki-zome that I wrote last year. And then on the right-hand side, there is a Japanese poem that I really like that talks about dreams. And moving on to our next calligrapher, who I'm so excited to be able to introduce, we have Mrs. Kyoko Okada with us today. Right, and Mrs. Kyoko Okada has trained also under teacher Osawa in Sendai, and she has practiced calligraphy for about 30 years. And what's notable about Mrs. Kyoko Okada is that she has a level of Master Shihan. And this is a very, very honorable level of calligraphy because it is at this point that you are able to have your own school of calligraphy in Japan. And so thank you so much for being with us today. And so in terms of what Mrs. Kyoko Okada's goggle is chisai. And chisai, the first character means 1,000, and then sai means coloring. So her goggle reflects her calligraphy, how it has the vibrance to paint 1,000 colors is the message that our teacher wanted to gift her. And so on the right-hand side, we have a few of her pieces, and it is written in a style called desho. And the first one is jitomyo, which means to live a life where you are the foundation. And then on the right-hand side, we have a Japanese song. Right, so now we want to move on to our calligraphy pieces. So like I mentioned, we were really reflecting and meditating on what we wanted to draw and write for you as our Kaki-zome words of the year. And so we have selected two. So the first one that our Master Shihan Chisai will be writing for us is Shizentai. And this is such a good one that I think she chose for us. And I really think this is like such a wonderful word. It means to be one's natural self. And what I find so beautiful about the Japanese language is that if we look at what the characters mean, it gives us so much insight on how we can act on that. And so when we break down Chizentai, the first character, she is actually the character we use for ourselves. And it also means naturally. The second character, Zen, is as is and naturally. So it's also really interesting because these first two characters, Shizen, that's what we mean when we say nature. And I've always found that really interesting because if we, try to understand that, to me, that means that if we want to be ourselves, then we should lean on nature to teach us how. And last but not least, Tai. This is the character that means body and state. And so keeping that in mind, the nuances to this word. So the first definition is that it's actually originally used in judo and kendo, the martial arts, and it refers to the basic stance for the body to be in its most natural and unforced position. The second definition is that it also includes your heart and body are in their most natural and relaxed condition. And the third definition is having no prejudice or preconceived notions. So this is the first Kaki-zome piece that we will be writing for you. The second one is kan, and this means to feel. And so, like I mentioned, Japanese characters are really interesting because if you break it down, they give us a little bit more insight. So if we break down this character, the top part is actually representative of a mouth and an axe. And so this is actually a symbol, meaning that you're gasping from the movement of a large axe. And then the second part means kang, is at the bottom, is for heart and soul. And this means that it comes from the heart. And so if we combine that and keep that in mind, the nuances to this word is that it's interactions that move your heart and soul. And two, it's to know one's feelings through your five senses. And so the reason why we decided to choose this one was that, we often put such focus on our mind. I know I do. I really rely on my mind to help me make decisions, to, process information. But sometimes I ignore my gut. And so this was a really great character that came up for us while we were exploring different options, because this shows us that in order to understand our gut, we can rely on our body, we can rely on our five senses, because it is those types of senses that can help us when we are confused and trying to make decisions. All right, so now that we have explained these two Kaki-zome pieces for you, what we would like to do now is launch a poll and have everyone choose which character and Kaki-zome piece resonates with them more. And so before I do that, I did want to remind everyone that, I think we're often told many things in society that we should want this, we should want that by media. But really what we wanted to do today is remind everyone that, the choice is yours and you know yourself more than anyone else. And so, when you check in with yourself, I would be curious to hear which one resonates with you more. So let me launch the poll now. All right. Okay, so I'll give everyone about 30 seconds. I'm seeing it's a race. Okay, this is really fun. I get to see like some live updates. Okay, you have about 10 more seconds. It looks like a good amount of everyone is choosing already. Okay. All right, you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And if I were to share the results, let's see what everyone picked. Really interesting. It's honestly a 50-50 split. I did not know that would happen, but that's great. So it looks like everyone chose half and half, which is going to be great because now we're going to be moving on to the exhibition. So awesome. All right. Looks like I'm doing a good job explaining both. Okay. Right. So now we're going to be going over the exhibitions. And so first, we'll be going over Shizentai, which is going to be performed by Master Chisai, and then I will be writing Kang. And so when we do this, a few things to keep in mind. The writing itself actually doesn't take that long, and it's only about a minute or so, and we're actually going to be doing it in silence. And I remember when we were practicing, it was hard for me because sometimes it only seems like a minute and yet it seems like a really long minute because you see yourself feeling distracted by so many things going on. And so if you were to try this concept and experience machine, which is what we're trying to show today, I would recommend, or you could join me putting down your phone perhaps face down and seeing how you feel as we write these two pieces for you. All right, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I'm curious to hear how you feel right now. I just wrote con myself, and I was just checking in with myself. And I always remember thinking, and we often hear that perhaps it's a lot slower than what you thought it would be. I know we share calligraphy writings before on our digital platforms, and it is sped up. So I think I always remember thinking, and when I practice it myself, that there's actually a lot of beauty in taking your time to do things. And if anything, it was an important reminder for me. And so I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts. And so, oh, peaceful. Oh, Anna Marie, that's a really great way to say that. And so I'm so glad to hear that that resonated with you. Very zen from Nisha, relaxed, calm. Oh, these are so great. Oh, this is so wonderful to hear. And so now that we have tried this for you all, what we would love for everyone to do is try your own. I think the reason why we were actually very purposeful when we did this, exhibition, that we didn't want it to do a follow along style, because just as we learned in Japanese calligraphy, the whole goal is to be in the moment. And, we thought it wouldn't be possible if you were trying to follow along. And so we really wanted to first create that experience for you all, so that now that you have experienced it, you could write your own version. And so what we'll be doing is that we'll share these pieces on Instagram so that you could use them as a guide now that you have chosen your intention. And if you want to write your own, what you could do is you could use a calligraphy brush. There is a company called Kaki-zome Japan that I really like and recommend. You could also use an ink, a pen, a marker. It really can be anything. And I think that's something we really wanted to make sure we communicated to you all today, is that we really hope that you don't feel limited by the tools to give it a try, because this is for you. And so once you try it, we would love to see it. I think would love to see everyone's creative versions and their own creative expressions. And so, of course, it's important to keep the basic principles in mind. But, instead of trying to get too caught up into, being too strict on ourselves, I think one important reminder is to have fun. We want to remember what mushin is. And mushin is the state where you're not controlled by your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and really in the moment. And so a really great way to do that is if you enjoy and have fun with it. Right. So once you have hopefully created your versions, how can you align your 2022 with your Kaki-zome? And so we have a few recommendations. And so the first one is to make it visible. This is a really important practice within Kaki-zome. So what I typically like to do is, after I write my Kaki-zome, I will put it on my wall, and then I would also take a picture of it and then put it on as my wallpaper. Because what is this? Our Kaki-zome really is our visual reminder of our intention that we ourselves decided will help serve us. So this is going to be a visual cue for you throughout the year. Second, write down and define what your Kaki-zome means to you. As we learn, words can mean so many different things to so many different people. And that's the beauty of it. And so once you have figured out which one, your Kaki-zome is, write down what it means, and try to be as specific as possible. What kan means to me may be different things to you. So it's important to write that down. 3, create goals that align with your intention. At the beginning, we shared the difference between what an intention and goal is. But now that we've set an intention, what we would recommend is creating goals. This could be really similar to the corporate side when you set SMART goals. And so when you do that, you want to make sure they're specific, measurable, action-based, realistic, and time-bound. And so, sometimes I think we get the order wrong, but now that we have created our intention, we recommend creating goals around that. 4, don't go at it alone. I think there's such power to sharing your Kaki-zome with your community. Not only does it help, with accountability, it could also, create that kotodama idea where the more you talk about it, the more it's going to come into fruition. So it's really going to be powerful if you talk about it. 5, invest in yourself and prove through action. And, this is very much a coaching principle in terms of how you want to make sustainable change. That's really done through intention plus action. And so, now we recommend investing in yourself. It doesn't have to be money, it could be time, but there's so many available options online, offline, and it's really about really leaning into what you are interested in. So this could be arts, this could be coaching, this could be your hobbies, this could be professional development. But we really recommend showing to yourself through action that you want to align your 2022 with your intention. And last but not least, give yourself grace. I think we wanted to wrap up this Kaki-zome with the reminder that because we know ourselves the most, we are also, the most strict to ourselves. And so the fact that you have decided to take an hour of your Saturday from all over the world to learn about something new for yourself in and of itself is proof that you are already working on that professional development aspect. And so we just wanted to remind everyone that we hope everyone is really kind to themselves, because sometimes we're not. All right, so this wraps up our Kaki-zome event. If you are interested in learning more, I know we had a couple questions about that. You could reach out to us at saori@mogamiwellness.com, or you could also visit our website. We also offer, corporate wellness programs, as well as if you want to learn more about calligraphy, in terms of workshops or wellness coaching, you could definitely reach out to us. And so does anyone have any last questions or comments before we wrap up today? Thank you for a good session. Oh, this is so nice. Yes, it was my pleasure.